right, welcome to the Two Sons Podcast. Happy Wednesday, everybody. Hope all of you guys are having a great week. We were talking House of the Dragon. I believe it's episode 5, if I remember correctly.
It's 5.
It's the one where AEMOND gets named the Regent. That'll be the dead giveaway. Not a super action-packed episode,
But still good. Yeah, just a lot of development in the best way.
A lot of interesting kind of development. I thought the most interesting part of the episode where I want to start is the whole concept of the Greens replacing Aegon. So Aegon gets injured at the battle at Rook's Rest.
Yes, to say the least.
Injured.
Yeah, to say the least. Injury sounds like he twisted his ankle out there.
Yeah, he's medium rare.
Yeah,
and
cooked up by his bro.
And he's got a broken rib. He's got his
knee is everywhere.
It's in the books too, but Aegon had
squeeze some lemon juice on him.
Armor was exactly.
This will make sure the bone infection gets out of there.
Just some drawn butter next to it. They in the books too, like his armor was literally melted to his body, which is something you see. But as a result, the Greens need to come up with a sitting ruler, and there's this really, really interesting and ironic scene where they're having the small council meeting, and Lady Alicent pitches herself as the leader. And what's so damn funny about this, and I'm not treading any new ground here because people have made this statement all over the place, but it's hilarious that Alicent, who literally launched this war by virtue of putting a undeserving man on the throne, someone that she knew was incompetent. She put someone she knew was incompetent on the throne over someone else in Rhaenyra that she knew was more competent, but was a female. She did that and then actually thought that she'd sit in the same small council and that those people would be like, yeah, you know what? You're the one that we're going to put on the throne.
Yeah, that'd be great.
Over the actual line of succession. Because the whole point is the reason why Rhaenyra and Aegon were kind of up for debate was there was no clear heir at that point in time, and then Viserys named Rhaenyra, and then he refused to unname her. But
after having a male,
exactly.
Yeah.
But as soon as Aegon II became king, Aemon's the heir.
Of course,
Aemon's the heir.
Yes.
In the same way that when House of the Dragon season 1 started, Damon was the heir because he was the king's brother. The king's brother is the heir when the king doesn't have a male child.
Correct.
So that was pretty straightforward.
And then she tries to put Sir Criston Cole on the spot.
Yeah.
She's like, honey, what do you think? And he's like, what do you want me to tell you?
Yeah.
You know?
And I loved Cole's comment because Cole's comment was like, you don't know what I've seen.
Yeah.
And he basically goes, we've given the war over to the dragons. And he's like, I want a dragon rider leading us, which I thought was super dope. But before even that conversation, there's kind of this moment where the small council's talking and the camera zooms in on Alicent and she kind of starts to have a panic attack.
Right.
And I want to just be the lack of self-awareness here because you had to have known you had to have known that this was what was going to happen.
You were talking about the acting too. So Alicent's character, just they're act a panic attack, but do it quietly. And she kicked ass on that.
Yeah.
Right. And then even the small parts, later on in the episode, when Damon's getting,
confronted by the River Lords.
Yeah. Even that chick is just a phenomenal actress. It was all just so top notch. It always has been in Game of Thrones.
I was actually talking about this with Carly last night because we watched episode 7 of The Acolyte because she had not seen it to prepare for the Acolyte season finale. And I was making the same point. The Acolyte was good, but the acting in The Acolyte is not as good as House of the Dragon. And
not even close.
We are on 10 seasons of Game of Thrones content now between the 8 seasons of Game of Thrones and the 2 seasons of House of the Dragon. And it is a consistent theme that and this to me is a leadership thing. This comes from the top down. This is in the people that are the decision makers. They had a certain standard clearly and what they expected out of their actors
for sure
and actresses in order to make these shows work. And they held to that, and it makes all of the difference. It makes all of the difference in the way the show is perceived.
I would love to sit on the set there and then sit on the set at let's say the Acolyte and just notice the differences. Not saying they would be good or bad, just noticing the difference.
Yeah.
I think that would be so incredibly interesting.
No, I think that it's a little bit of just being really picky when you're doing your auditions and doing your casting.
Yeah.
It's probably a little bit of a money thing.
Probably.
And then yeah, like good directing is
Good
a
directing.
Huge, it is a huge piece of it too.
Yeah.
And one of the things, and I'm not sure even if House of the Dragon and Game of Thrones does this, but one of the things Disney's been doing with Star Wars has been like using different directors on like every episode, which I think is kind of strange.
It is strange.
I wonder if you get like kind of an inconsistent, like Leslie Headland was not directing The Acolyte; she was the creator of The Acolyte, right? And so, yeah, like I do find that concept fascinating. But yeah, like that specific scene you're referencing, where the woman who's one of the River Lords, who kind of like chews out Damon, that was a great example of like classic Game of Thrones acting. And she basically goes like, "We will not kneel to a tyrant," which is in reference to his manipulations of the Brackens and the Blackwoods, and basically just him being a dickhead and paying the price for it, right?
Yeah, I mean he's been a dickhead since day one, and
yeah, exactly,
has always paid the price for it. Really quick before we switch topics, Aemond could not be a better king, in my opinion. Like out of anybody in this entire show, maybe aside from Damon, he is the clear-cut best king, I think, in my opinion.
So I disagree with you. I think Rhaenyra is. Because I think Rhaenyra is motivated by one thing and one thing only: the Song of Ice and Fire.
That's a great argument.
One of the things that Alicent points out, which is true, is Aemond is fueled by a sense of revenge towards the Blacks, starting from when he got his eye taken.
Yes.
So, like, I view Aemond as... I get what you're saying, in the sense that Aemond is, like...
Qualities.
Healthy,
quality-wise.
Good fighter, educated. Like, because remember the whole thing? He's like, I'm the one who read the histories. I'm the one... He's obviously a smart military commander. What he pulled at Rook's Rest was genius. Like...
Calculated.
I'm not disagreeing with you on that
He
front.
cuts down the rat catchers, like, almost immediately.
Yeah.
That's a good vibe.
Yes.
Yeah.
But his core motivation is revenge.
That's a great argument.
And that is the one thing that kind of makes him kind of a sketchy king.
Yeah.
Rhaenyra, I think Rhaenyra made some mistakes, especially early in the war, in terms of like her constantly trying to avoid the war when it was already a lost cause. Like, it was one thing when it was early on, but it was a lost cause. Like, as soon as Damon killed Jacaerys, it was over.
Yeah.
Like, it was over. You might have been able to salvage things right after Lucerys died, but the first thing you said is, bring me Aemon Targaryen, which Damon took as license to go fuck shit up, and he did, and, and it caused a massive problem. So, but yeah, I do think Rhaenyra at her core, though, is like a patient decision maker. She has the best motive. And she has the best motive.
By far. Yeah, from a quality standpoint, yeah, Aemon's great, but you're right. Yeah, Rhaenyra does have the best motive, for sure. And she's the rightful heir, in my opinion, according to her father. Yeah.
There's two other major events that happen in the show, in this episode. Jacaerys talks with Baela about, I think it was Baela, about how he's frustrated because he hasn't been very active in this conflict. And so he takes it upon himself to go to the Freys. And he negotiates a deal with them, basically offers them Harrenhal. Everyone offers Harrenhal. Yeah. Luke's new to everyone getting offered Harrenhal, because that's what happens in Game of Thrones.
I feel like I have it at this point.
But like, everyone gets offered Harrenhal in Game of Thrones. It's like the little token that gets passed around. And so Jacaerys successfully pulls that off, which I thought was cool. And it was super basic kind of concept. In the Riverlands, in order to march down from the north, you have to cross at the Freys castle. And that ends, I won't get any further into it, but that ends up being a massive plot piece, like a gigantically important plot piece.
It's a giant bridge.
In the early seasons of Game of Thrones, the Freys and that bridge are everything in the battle between the Starks and the Lannisters. Because the Starks have to march down from the north. And so similarly, Cregan Stark is marching down from the north, and they have to cross that same bridge. And so Jacaerys basically has pulled that off. So that was really cool. And that feeds into when he comes home and tells Rhaenyra, one of the interesting kind of dynamics that takes place is the Blacks have just taken a huge loss in terms of Meleys dying, right? Meleys has died. Rhaenys has died. So at this point, they're looking for more dragon firepower. And at Dragonstone, there are all these dragons that live there. Vermithor, Sea Smoke. There are all these I think there's 6 of them, I think, that are unclaimed, that are living in that area.
That they're just like feeding?
Well, they
presumably
they live there and they feed on the surrounding livestock. Like they've been there for years and years and years. So, like, for instance, like when Rhaenyra's first husband, I can't remember his name, Laenor. When Laenor Velaryon decides to go across the water and just be happy with his boyfriend instead of staying in Westeros.
Yeah, I forgot about that.
Yeah, so when he goes to do that, his dragon remains unclaimed, which I believe is Sea Smoke. So like Sea Smoke's there. So Rhaenyra and Jacaerys have this really interesting conversation about how like, well, what if we find these Targaryens that have married into other families, and we find people that have a little bit of the dragon's blood, and see if they can ride these dragons. And that ends up being a huge plot point later on in the war.
Do you think that it's absolutely critical that they have dragon's blood, or do you think that's just kind of part of the mystique of Game of Thrones, and that like a dragon really doesn't know or care? Do you think it actually matters? Because they even alluded, they're like, it might be thin blood, and they're like, well, who cares, right?
So there is, to your point, Rhaenyra and Jacaerys Rhaenyra kind of points out like, well, this sounds like something we would say to make us, or I think Jacaerys might have actually been the one who says it, like, this sounds like something we would say to make ourselves sound cooler.
Right.
But for whatever it's worth, the only two people that rode dragons in the Game of Thrones actual 8-season show were Targaryens.
Yeah.
So like at a certain point, the only thing we've seen is Targaryens. But I do remember this from when I read up on the Dance of the Dragons forever ago. They do eventually end up getting people to ride dragons. I can't remember who or the context around it, and we're just
like a bunch of like bastards, right?
We're obviously going to find out. Yeah. If I'm not mistaken, I think the Corlys Valerian's bastard ends up being one of the ones who rides a dragon. So like, but like, there's a bunch of that kind of stuff that they get into. But that's pretty much it for this episode. It wasn't
Corlys,
super eventful.
Yeah.
Yep.
So Corlys becomes Hand of the King.
Yeah,
after a lot
cool.
of debate, right? And I think that's a good move for him. I think that's cool.
Corlys has gotten dealt a shit hand of cards.
Yeah, you feel bad, man.
He lost
really
his wife.
do.
He lost all his kids.
Yeah,
and nearly died himself. And so, like, I think he was kind of at his wit's end, and I think the Hand of the King thing was like a token to try to like pull him back from the brink. And Baela, I'm pretty sure it was Baela, and I think it's Baela and Rhaena, but I think Rhaena's the one that went. I can't went with all the eggs and stuff, so I can't remember which one is which. But one of them ends up being the one that's older, the one that flies Sea Smoke, not Sea Smoke, Silver. I can't remember her dragon's name. Moondancer. The one who rides Moondancer, she's the one that ends up going to Corlys and basically talking him off the ledge, which was a huge move on her part, because Corlys obviously is very important to Rhaenyra's fortunes at this point in the story. And
then the last part is Damon. Damon is slowly just going into madness.
Yes, continuing. Damon just been tripping balls for.
He needs to get out and take a walk.
Yes, he does. He needs to get out of that damn castle, man.
Yeah, I'm very curious to see how, like, where that buck ends and where he's just like, this is not good for me. Like, I need to do something different. He's
been like borderline counterproductive for a while. So yeah, I'm really curious to see how he redeems himself in the long run, because he feels to me like a character that's going to get redeemed.
Agreed.
And I don't like have any idea how. I know what happens to Damon. I won't say it on the show, but I know what happens to Damon at the very end. But I can't remember what happens in the middle. And I feel like he does get back on Rhaenyra's good side at one point. I'm curious to see how.
Damon is always doing like the whole entire like prodigal son song and dance.
Oh yeah,
where he like goes off and does his thing and then comes back and then goes off and then comes back. And right now he's off until he comes back, but. For this go around, he's talking about how he's king already, and how he's going to make his wife queen, not because she deserves it, but because she's his wife, which is absolutely crazy to me.
And you brought this up on the show the other at some point early in the season, the idea of Damon being the prodigal son, and it's kind of like an interesting concept, because like it's kind of this idea where like Damon is such a powerful force too. Because he rides Caraxes, who's one of the biggest dragons in the world, like he kind of represents like when he comes back and kind of like gets on his hands and knees and begs to just like to rejoin the good side. Like you kind of have to be like, all right, come on, because we need your help.
Yeah, dude, we love you. You're so cool. Come back, Uncle Damon.
Any other thoughts on this episode?
No, man, I think that was it. Like it wasn't. It was a good episode, I thought. Like, it wasn't short by any means. There was still a lot that happened, but it was just enjoying really good story writing.
Yeah.
Continue
to build out the characters.
Yeah. like lately I've been like very much so into just trying to like savor each word that is put into like a TV show or a movie, just because like so much time is taken by like creating these scripts, and Game of Thrones and House of the Dragon are like the ultimate example of that.
Well, we have an appreciation of that attention to detail, which is cool. And like I think especially as we get deeper into Game of Thrones, as we start a rewatch of that, like that is what makes that show great too.
Yeah.
And like that's why that show is revered as one of the greatest television shows of all time, which is going to be exciting when we get into it.
Yeah.
All right, guys, that's all we have for today. As always, we sincerely appreciate you guys for supporting us in the show. As I mentioned, we're going to be back next week with House of the Dragon next episode, as well as kind of a recap of the Acolyte, just kind of like thinking about it within the bigger picture of Star Wars. And then we have more content coming after that. As always, we appreciate you guys, and we'll see you next week.
Thanks a lot.